we're very thankful that Nitin, someone like you has come. Right now, the whole conversation is centered around money. How are you looking at the macro trends in India right now and how will it evolve?
The first one is that the entire COVID situation itself is right. We don't know currently whether we are close to a peak in infections. I'm no one. I'm not medically qualified enough to comment on that. But I think various people are talking about how long is this lockdown going to go on? Is it going to be a V-shaped, a U-shaped, a L-shaped, or a W-shaped recovery? Will lockdowns continue happening? This is a conversation that we can have for hours together. But I think there are actually two things that are very clear as a result of it. The first is that the economic impact as a result of this lockdown has been severe, right? And I think the way that it has played out both globally as well as in India is actually being completely seen. I think it's one of the first times that you're realizing how interconnected our economy is and how impact on any one sector actually has an impact everywhere. So when you're talking about money, you're so right because you suddenly realize that how something that is completely not connected to you is actually interconnected through this whole weave together. And the two things that are completely clear is one is that this quarter is going to be very bad. Be it if you're a public listed company, if you're a small entrepreneur, right? You're not looking at revenues that are more than 10-20% of normal times, unless you are one of the lucky few who's actually seeing increase in demand as a result of the COVID phenomena. But that's very few. Secondly, the point is that if you actually look at it, 55% of the economy is still working, right, despite the lockdown, because of the fact that the lockdown has been limited to certain cities, right? The lockdown has been limited to various places, but there is still a portion of the economy that's working. But that's not enough to really lift up the whole economy. I think the third biggest issue is the fact that I think there's lesser worry that I have on supply as I have on demand, right? Because what I believe will really play out over the next few. So I think to cut a long story short, and I can speak for this for long, but I think there is an impact on the economy for the next 1 year at least. The most clear impact of it you will see within the next 3 to 6 months, and then you will see things recover over a period of time. It's going to be a question of two things. One is that, of course, once your supply chains, your logistics, the way that you work together will, come back to some form of normalcy. A state like Goa is actually one of the first to start that. I was reading a very interesting article today about how they are starting to go back to normalcy because they finally declared that they are COVID free. Now let's see. I hope fingers crossed that continues. But I think the biggest issue is really in terms of demand, right? In terms of unemployment, in terms of migrant labor, in terms of the kind of impact that the businesses will face, both in terms of funding, right, materials, and of course, as I said, therefore, and also in terms of our psyche itself, right? When people are thinking of money, will they be making discretionary spends, right? Will the kind of pieces that you were looking at earlier continue to play out? I think it's too early to call the jury on it, but I think fundamentally, elevator answer for this is that this year is going to be a very bad year. It's going to take us at least 12 to 18 months to recover and to get back to pre-COVID levels in the best case scenario.
How do you look at wealth? Where do you park your money? How do you think about wealth? And I want to hear from you that.
So there are a number of experts who can tell you where you should park your wealth right now, and I can also give a very long-winded response around whether we should get into equity at this time, whether we should get into fixed income, what are the various avenues. But I think this is basically a time to actually look and reassess at your financial position first, right? If I take a step back, and you were talking about money originally and saying that on everybody's mind, the first piece, do I have enough money? Can I really look through seeing that if there are any unforeseen circumstances over the next few months, do I have enough money with me to last that? So I think if you go to the basic tenets of saving, the first one is you have to have an emergency cash position, right? And especially COVID proves this more than anything else, that you should have at least 3 to 6 to 9 months of liquidity available with you to ensure that any unforeseen position, be it with regard to your business, be it with regard to your job, be it with regard to your salary, etc., you have enough money in the bank to tide that over. The second one is that if today you are invested within the market, you're already part of all the ups and downs that are happening within the market structure. So you have to basically play that out. because the markets did correct tremendously. Then they've seen a whipsaw movement back. They've gone back again, and the markets always react faster than what the real economy does. A lot of people say, what is an equity investor seeing that the market is climbing back all the way to 10, 11,000, right? Even though we believe that everything is to be going wrong with the world over the next 6 to 12 months, right? So I think if you're there, you have to ride this journey. But it's a great time to look at your portfolio and to see what you need to do from a quality perspective. The one piece that is very clear is that when this lockdown lifts, when businesses start going back to normalcy, the people who will win, right, will be industry leaders, will be people who have quality, will be people who have scale currently for the next 12 to 18 months. And therefore, if there are changes that need to happen in your portfolio to reorient yourself, that is one very important thing to do. The second thing, Shraddha, is that a lot of people have invested in debt or fixed income mutual funds, right? And over the last few years, with the mutual fund Sahi Hai campaign, and with the number of people investing in SIPs and starting to put more and more money and pulling it out of FDs, you've also seen a lot of volatility in the fixed income market. And actually, that volatility has been much more than what you've seen on equity, because currently what is happening is that companies have a cash flow problem. Therefore, you don't know whether their bonds will mature. You don't know whether they'll be able to pay it back. Banks are not ready to lend. There's not enough liquidity, right? Everybody's talking about that, really. And that can have an impact on mutual funds. Now, for example, you would have seen since last night and today that there's been a problem that has happened with one of the mutual funds who's gone and suspended a few of their schemes, right? And customers are in fact very worried today, right? Because what has happened is that customers have a triple whammy. They've seen their equity portfolios fall, right? They're seeing issues in fixed income credit, right? They're asking those questions. They also don't know what is the light at the end of the tunnel, because it is too early for anyone to say how long is this going to last, right? So I think what I would advise to every person is really look at quality. First is have that nest egg away for you. However big or however small you are, it is very important to have some cash and some nest egg built away for an emergency day. See, these are unprecedented times, and this has shown that we would have never thought of this ever happening in our lifetimes. The second piece is really look at building quality in your portfolio. If you have to talk to your advisor, see if you have to reallocate something. If you have large holdings lying in some funds which are not doing well, or some stocks that are not doing well, move towards industry leaders and do it gradually. There is no hurry. The markets will be very volatile over the next few months. You will have opportunities to do that. The third is that from a fixed income perspective, Shraddha, the most important thing again over there is to look at high quality, right? Be invested in AAA, be invested in stuff that you can afford to sleep at night knowing that your money over there is not at risk. Interestingly, a lot of customers are actually sitting on cash as well today, looking for opportunities. Now, for those, it's a great time, because the kind of opportunities that you will get today will really ensure that in the longer run, you make some substantial amount of alpha or growth than what you would have done in normal times. I think the last thing that is happening is that a lot of customers forget their own personal wealth, but they are completely hands on deck in their own businesses right now, right? And therefore, for them, one of the most important pieces is that they combine the two and they say, will my business need money over the next few months? So before I take decisions on whether to put in more money, what to do with my money, I need to put into my own business. So I think that's how I would break this answer up for you.
If people have to look at the stock market, right, what would your advice be? People are asking about, should we exit debt MF for emergency?
One of the pieces, and my central thesis around this is quality and is about market leadership within the sectors that you operate in. What has happened is that this has been an unprecedented event. It has gone and hit your entire supply and demand chains completely. For any player, for any company that was not a market leader or that did not have a very compelling value proposition in the industry that they dealt with, they are going to face a lot of pain, right? But this is a time where you should really be looking at seeing, right? But what has happened is that a lot of other stocks, right, which were very overvalued historically, and I can take a few examples, and of course a few of them have again come back to earlier levels. But to take an example, like there was a time when HDFC Bank really corrected, when Bajaj Finserv really corrected, right? These are all leaders within their various spaces. Now, Today you have an opportunity to actually look at saying that if you have money already parked in the market, and I'm talking about money that is already within the stock market, you have an opportunity to look at your portfolio and say, how do I get into market leaders that I know will recover faster and will have a much larger market share over the next few years than what they had even today, because they're best equipped to take advantage of this. You see, we are seeing this globally, we are seeing this in India, right? For large players who had market share, they've been able to get their act together. They've been able to get their systems executed. They are on the ground in terms of doing a lot of stuff. For emerging guys who might have been very good, right? But it takes time to put all of this together. Now, in the next 3 to 5 years, could there be a different story? Yes. But for the next 2 to 3 years, right, you have to look at those stocks from a portfolio perspective that are going to provide you both that safety and quality. I think the second point on the stock market is that if you are asking, should I put money now, right? And I'm sure that that is a question that would have also come to you.
Yes.
I would advise that you do it in a staggered manner, right? It is too early to judge how this whole pandemic will play out. The market has reacted ahead of reality, right? And you see a lot of economic data coming out. We were talking to a lot of the SEBI and a lot of the regulatory bodies a few days ago, talking about the fact that when the first quarter results come out for companies, right, they will be very bad, because all of us know that the first quarter results will be bad because you'll only see 5 or 10% revenue as compared to 100. Now, should you therefore be looking at, let's say, saying that you delay it, or you allow it to happen or you allow only the first 2 quarter results to come out together, as has happened in a lot of places globally. Now, whether that happens or not, the point that I'm trying to make is that when those results come out, or when you get more clarity around companies, markets will react, and you'll see either stocks going down or stocks going up. If you have money waiting to get into the market, do it in a staggered manner. There is no hurry. You can wait and watch for the next few days, right? You do it in a staggered manner when you get more information clarity. Today, there's a lot of information asymmetry. We don't have that answer. Second question is on debt funds. And I think that that's a very important question, right? And I must make a very clear distinction for people. People are getting worried because they're seeing a lot of news right now about the fact that, okay, you've seen issues happen within Franklin Templeton today, right? Who has put a lot of credit risk funds on hold. Now, I'll answer this in 2 ways, right? There is a certain universe of debt funds. Within the debt fund universe, only about 5% of money is parked in credit risk. And by credit risk, you basically mean papers that are below A minus, etc. Right? The rest of it is all parked in highly liquid AAA, AA plus, corporate bonds, PSUs, government security paper. Right? The second piece is that currently I believe that this contagion is only limited to this one fund, because they've seen a lot of redemption pressures over the course of the last few weeks and months, right? And therefore they have taken the right call in the best interest of investors to do this kind of moratorium, or to do this winding down, so that customers getting out do not gain over existing customers. But that doesn't mean that the debt fund space is bad, right? In fact, you should not be taking knee-jerk reactions in today's market to exit debt funds, right? Because that will cost. Because the cost of your exit, there's cost of exit loads, cost of what you're losing in terms of returns, right? There is a taxation element on top of it. Would be much larger than any unforeseen risk that you see. But again, over there, my submission is look at quality. If you're invested to some extent in some credit risk funds, right, and you want to allocate. And you want to reallocate out of that, please reallocate out of that and get onto the short term, the AAA, PSU, banking type of funds on the debt fund side that will give you good returns, and that will ensure that your capital is protected. The two pieces that are very critical in this market is that don't take decisions that lead to large erosions of capital. So one is you have to look at capital preservation, and then you have to look at the right opportunity for growth to follow from there. So I'm just trying to simplify this so that it can appeal to everybody who's on the call.
How are you looking at investing, putting your money in the startup space at the moment?
No, I completely. I think it's a very valid question. I think from two perspectives. One is that I think that it's a very interesting ecosystem. Second is I think Vendors itself has a very large knowledge base and a very large and a deep connect within that space. So let me talk about startups in two ways, right? Today you've seen a large impact happen within the startup ecosystem today, right? You've seen a fundamental shift happen from people chasing multiples to really people looking at sustainable businesses going forward, right? I think I think I will answer this in terms of two or three things, right? Going forward, and even today, we have investments that we've made within the startup ecosystem, right? We have a lot of investments that we have that our customers have made, especially within the digital space, and I continue to believe that that's a space that will actually benefit as a result of COVID. And I'll tell you why, because it will change customer preferences completely, right? I mean, what you and I were used to doing face to face, we have also over the last few days started to look at doing digitally, right? If I was used to having a yoga instructor come home and have a yoga class with him or her, right? Today I'm actually willing to go online and actually do that again as well, right? And uh, and I think, and I have a lot of thoughts on this, so I'll actually try and break it up into two or three things. So from a sectoral perspective, I think the plays that will do very well will continue to be digital, will continue to be plays focused on health and wellness, right? But plays that are focused on strong consumer brands, right? Because I believe that as this COVID piece opens up and as you see changes in customer preferences, strong brands who've been able to build out very unique business models will actually continue to benefit. But I think the big distinction that has to be made in today's day is that if I look at it today, right, there are basically three pieces. And I was talking about that even on the listed space, but even on the unlisted space is even more important. What is the quality of the brand and the quality of the founder that you have? What is the unique value proposition that you're looking at? How is this business going to benefit from the channel choices and the channel changes that are going to happen in consumer behavior? I think the other lens that has become very important now is looking at how that business is run. How is this cost run? What are the cash flows like? Is there a sound business model here? Are customers going to pay money on it? And therefore, if there's a focus on and desire on profitability, I do believe that this is a space that will continue to grow, right? The people who are already there and who are able to derive these, clearly demonstrate these, will actually not be bereft of capital. There is still a lot of capital that's going to be coming. Interestingly, both in the venture debt as well as in the venture equity space, you will see a flow of capital happening over the course of the next few years. Most private equity funds, most venture funds are sitting on a lot of dry powder, right? A lot of players like Sequoia, etc., have also announced that they're going to be raising more money. They're going to be raising almost $1.3 billion, even as one of the largest India allocations. So I'm actually very positive about this space, but I do believe that there's going to be a lot of destruction in terms of a lot of the players that are there today. Currently, over the next 12 months, a lot of the players who are already there and who've grown to a certain size will see an immediate benefit versus any other insurgent player, right? But over the next 3 to 5 years, you will actually see new brands become even more and more interesting.
Most of the venture capital that you're talking about, the money is from outside India, right? It's not from Indian HNIs. Are you seeing that change?
No, we are actually seeing that change a lot. So see, I'll tell you, it's a little difficult to comment upon what's happening over the last 45, 60 days, because I think very few investors have the mindset or the appetite immediately to look at new investments, and they're worried about what's happening within their own portfolios. So apart from people who are sitting on cash, who have actually been very, so I've been on at least 2 or 3 calls with customers who've been keen on looking at opportunities to explore to invest. They are saying if they are high quality businesses that are suffering from cash flows today, we actually want to find a way of ensuring that we are able to support them and invest. So if you ask me, from an ecosystem of ultra HNIs, people who have the money, people who have the sophistication, and who have the dry capital available today, a lot of people are interested. A larger set of people who have historically invested are also waiting and watching, because they're waiting to see the impacts on their own businesses, right? But I think the one piece is that if you're going to people with quality ideas today, people continue to believe. In fact, there's a whole thesis that says that as compared, and a lot of people said that the thesis on the startup piece will change, because people will say that public markets have corrected so much that I would much rather go and buy HDFC, and which is 30% down, and I will make the same amount of money in the next 3 years that I would make from a startup ecosystem. But I don't think that that's necessarily played out fully. And I do believe that there is more and more domestic interest coming. The other interesting piece that is happening is that people are becoming much more mature and much more and are asking all the right questions around investment within this space. So there is no longer a race to just chase the next valuation story. So overall, there is interest. It'll take a little bit of time again over once dust settles. But I am long term very positive about more and more domestic interest and HI money coming into the space. We've seen that over the last 2 years really play out, and we continue to believe that the thesis will continue to play out.
Chinese investors would not be like investing the way they were. How do you see that playing a role in the growth of the Indian startup story?
So I think a very interesting question. So I'll answer that on two legs. One is the fact that whilst we've seen the government notify this change on FDI and on direct FDI of Chinese money coming in, I think there's still some more clarity awaited, and we are in touch with the regulatory bodies, including SEBI as well as the government, in terms of how does this impact larger funds. That's still a little bit of a lack of clarity around how this impacts investments by broad-based funds who may have Chinese customers, but investment decisions are made otherwise. I think there is still some clarity to emerge on that, and therefore we'll have to wait for the space to unfold. But I think more importantly, every time there is a crisis, we talk about the fact that you could see movement of supply chain, logistics, services moving from China to India, right? And we've seen that thesis play out in various manner within the past. But I think this time, given the unique nature of the thesis, given the fact that there is generally a focus towards two things. One is towards getting essential services manufacturing back in the country, and therefore over there looking at more localization. Second is also looking at how your non-essential services and how the supply chains play out and how it can't only be in one country, right? I think India will clearly benefit as a result of that. You will see benefit in terms of pharma. You'll see a lot of other benefit. So you will see some benefit happening to India as a result of those supply chains and logistics happening. It will take a little bit of time to unfold. As I said, you could see sectors like pharma, etc., benefiting as a result of it immediately. But I think across the startup ecosystem as well, you will see supply chain logistics changing. You will see how you reduce demand on China, etc. The second piece is, and I am positive on that, is again in terms of looking at how money flows into India, right? See, what all of you have to remember is that the global governments, right, including India, right, are flushing the market with liquidity. Right, stimulus to the extent of about 6% of world GDP has been announced so far, and all the central banks are doing this. And there is only one goal, which is to prevent depression and to prevent deflation, right? Which essentially means that there is so much money flowing around within the system that it's going to find its way into various investment outcomes. And I think if we are able to play our cards rightly, we should see some of that money coming in. So I think in summary, early to comment on the China piece because we are still waiting for some regulatory clarity on how it'll work for broad-based funds. Secondly, you will see some movement of supply chain, logistics, demand. Countries moving non-essential services out of just one location and actually diversifying it across locations, and India could be a beneficiary of that, right? And thirdly, I think as a result of all of the liquidity that is flowing around and as a result of what is happening, you will see a lot of that move into investment avenues, which if we are smart as a government and we are able to open and do the right pieces, which the regulators very keenly engaged in. We're having a lot of conversations with the regulator, and one of the pieces that we've been raising with the regulator is that you need to have flexibility of capital raising to be right at the top of the agenda, because what you don't want is that for companies that need money, right, they should be able to have access to that money, be it either through domestic or international means, without looking at, and really look at, in these unprecedented times, really look at your regulatory environment to ensure that you're able to make this as easy as possible. That you don't want to become a yes bank before you rescue it. You want to ensure that you're being preemptive much earlier before you really, to ensure that you're really able to take advantage of it. So Shraddha, that's what I was essentially talking about.
What would be your advice to all the entrepreneurs? What would you say to the majority who are building their businesses as of now, as of today?
So, Shraddha, to some extent, I actually identify and empathize with a lot of the entrepreneurs over here. My journey also so I actually joined Aventus about 2 months ago. I used to work with Standard Chartered and HSBC previously, and I spent 20 years over there. So you can imagine that coming into a new during, I think this most misused word today during these unprecedented times has its own set of challenges, right? And and you know what I would say is, and this is what I'm learning from my own experience as well. I think this is going to help all of us build character, right? It is going to add character to everybody. It is going to add character to every business that survives. Uh, it, a business that you build during a recessionary environment, right? And every piece of data shows this too. That a lot of the businesses that you build during recessionary environments succeed much more than anything that you build during a time where everything is great. You're getting great amount of valuation. You're getting round after round. You're spending it, right? And I think the piece that I've been most impressed upon this time is that when we are talking to a lot of the funds who are engaged in terms of working with startup community itself, is that whether somebody is really well funded for the next 2 to 3 years, right? Or whether somebody, of course, has only 3 or 6 months of money in the bank. Whether they are people who are seeing directions completely in terms of revenue flows of their business, or people are positively impacted as a result of COVID because of their piece, people are still asking the same question, saying, "Do I need this cost? Right? Do I need to redo my business model?" Right? As I was making that example of yoga to you, right? To say that if I have 3 or 4 great yoga studios, I'm only going completely reorient and completely, because there is a player who's actually done that, right? And they've come out with a great application as a result of it. So I think what I would suggest is that, guys, firstly, this builds immense character. Secondly, I was there during the 2007-2008 phenomena when the last recession happened, right? And what happened during the last recession is that people took very long and a lot of time to react to it, right? People kept things running, business as usual, thinking this too shall pass. Which is why you saw a lot of failures for a lot of business. This time, what doesn't happen is that people are reacting much ahead of the event, right? They're saying, what are the plans that we have? How do we? The most important piece right now is survival. If for companies that are bootstrapped, for companies that have these issues, the most important piece right now is survival. The second most important piece is to ensure that you hold your core talent together. Because if you're able to hold your core talent together, right, that is what will you in the longer run. And the third one is to really look very, very, very carefully at your value proposition and the good that you have, to ensure that you are looking at all levers of it and you are ready to reorient and reinvent. And as I was talking about earlier, saying, if you're looking at cost and cash flows, if you have a sound business model, if you have a desire on profitability, if you made 2 or 3 of these pieces right, I think this will really help you build character in yourself, your business, and the business outcome that you deliver. And I think the last piece that I would say is that it is very important to have a sound advisor. And I'm not talking about a well advisor. I'm talking about justice, right? Don't shy away from taking help from the entire ecosystem. This is one of the most interesting things that I've seen, is that so many people are ready and ready to help and really let be it with industry associations, be it with people to engage with. Right? Please take all the inputs that you need to be able to take decisions and reach out for help. Similarly, on your wealth, given that there is so much volatility happening within the market, please continue to seek advice of people who are equipped of talking to management advisors to ensure that you're making the right decisions. And they say, right, do something in haste and leisure. I would say take time, especially on personal decisions, right? From a personal wealth perspective, but be much more aggressive on what you do professionally. From a business perspective, have a plan and then execute it with full discipline. So I hope that helps, Shraddha.
What are some of the things you would say you've seen that these kind of people do very well, who attract a lot of wealth?
First is clarity of purpose, right? I think a lot of us get distracted with noise, right? And I think the clarity of purpose is very important. And I think especially for the people who are on this call, especially from the startup ecosystem, I would say for most of them that clarity of purpose exists, because for you to move from a steady salary paying job to go and want to build something and change the world, right? That clarity of purpose is a complete. I think the second point that I've seen in a lot of people, apart from clarity of purpose, is really the unique ability to be able to both have the discipline and rigor to be very short-minded with to short-term outcomes, but also think very strategic. It's very easy to say that, but I've seen that with very few people. Either people are at one end or people are at the other end, and I've seen this with very few people. And I think it's something that you should constantly think of, right? And the third one, which is highly underrated, is discipline. Right? I think discipline matters tremendously. To be able to get, to be able to know what you have to do and what you don't have to do, more importantly, right, matters tremendously. And I think that discipline is very important. And the fourth one is that you're always thinking of contingency plans, right? You always have plan B. So, I can talk about 5 more traits. This is what came up when you threw this question.
What has been your personal relationship with money? How do you view money in your own personal life?
So I think a very interesting question, and it forces it a little. But so I think as you grow and as you become older, I'm not talking about becoming more mature. That is saying as you grow older, right? Your needs and what money represents in your life changes. Right, much earlier in my life, when I didn't have a family, when I didn't have children, I looked at money in a very different way to the way that I look at it today. But I do believe that I'm a very firm believer of the fact that money chases the outcomes that you deliver. So I think for me, there are 2 or 3 pieces that I do. Firstly, with regard to managing my own money, whilst I am talking about a vast breadth of opportunities that I've just spoken about, I like to relatively keep my own stuff very simple. I'm a person who has been investing through SIP for the last 10 years. When I get lump sum monies as well, I put it in a staggered approach. I have about 65% of my holdings at 30% in fixed income. Apart from that, I have a real estate portfolio, but I'm not a firm believer of real estate. So I have a primary residence and 1 more residence at the most. I do believe that real estate as an industry is not going to play any meaningful role over the next few years in terms of growth, and therefore it is a financial piece that will matter. The second piece is that, as I said, I'm more focused on outcomes of what I'm trying to do and deliver, and I believe that money will follow for itself. You need to have enough money to ensure that you go to sleep at night, properly. And which is why, if you remember, when I started originally, I said that emergency nest egg is a very important thing, which very few of us do. We have money, but we park it away into stuff, and then we worry about thinking, what do we do about it? It's very important, everybody, because in today's volatile world, you may be an amazing superstar, but at times it's just about being at the wrong place at the wrong time as well, right? So I think that is very important, to not have that stress of money, because it can drive the wrong outcomes, right? And secondly, I think, as I said, COVID has also forced me to really think about what is essential and what is non-essential, right? And how should I be, living my life going forward? And I'm sure a lot of the viewers of the call are also going through a similar crisis. And believe you me, it actually makes you question a lot of things. So I think for me, much rather really focus on the quality of what I'm doing, have a happy day at work, be really enthused about whom I work with, and how I live these outcomes, and then money follows. But of course, at the end of it, when you have the money, you have to be very careful about what you are looking at. You have to work with a qualified advisor. You have to have a great and across the ecosystem. It fixes the startup ecosystem, the risk appetite, and the building period for it. Person and see mistake. So these are the 3 or 4 things I would say. I think lastly, a very interesting piece that is going to emerge in more, which is the interconnectedness of our economy. Offshore investments will become more critical, and I think if people make more and more money, one of the keys is that people want to shop.
Yeah.
You will see the emergence of that happen in India as well. So that's all I had to say on this, Shraddha.